I think even some of the Port fans here tonight are still a little bit stunned as to what they've seen.
Yeah, it was so powerful right at the get-go. They needed that response, though, didn't they? Been very disappointing early in the set. They had a big win against Richmond, but obviously Richmond's really struggling. And it started from their leaders, so I thought they were fantastic. And they're brave from the coach box well. They knew they had to change something up. Connor Rosey, the captain, goes to half-back in an unfamiliar role, Kath, and he executed really well right from the get-go. He was dangerous. We know he was their hard player of the match, and just the way he was able to get down and really be dominant in the forward half, wasn't he? Even though he's named on a half-back flank, he used the ball really well. 28 disposals, they're big numbers, but he just knew when he needed to sneak forward, when he needed to go back and defend, and he led from the front tonight.
And they found the replacement for Houston. I mean, that was always going to be the challenge throughout this season, and, you know, he's a player that could probably play in any position on the ground, but maybe what they lacked was that bounce off half-backs and the player that understands positioning. I was really quite surprised in his positioning. He knew where to stand at what time, and he hasn't played in defence at all, really, in his career, but they might have found their replacement for Dan Houston
And he's
tonight.
brave as well. He took 4 intercept marks, and Houston, as we know, has always been very good in the air.
So you think they stick with this now?
Oh, I don't think you can change on the back of that. I think they're already stacked in the midfield. When you talk about the players who they've got in there, they're
forget
overstacked.
about Wines as well, don't we? We often talk about Butters and Horn-Francis, but forget about Wines. Like, Wines are very good again tonight. And Travis Boak started to go in and do some centre bounces. Mead, they can start to get through there a bit more. So I think they've got enough numbers to allow Rosie to stay at half-back.
Well, let's give that man, Zak Butters, a bit of love, because he was the second highest rated player on the field tonight, 33 disposals. He's been super impressive in his first 2 games back from injury. And with all the talk about his future and whether he wants to stay at Port or not, well, he looked 100% invested this evening.
Yeah, second game back. I think that, you know, he seems like the type of player, and I'm pretty sure Georgiades named Zak Butters as the yapper, the number 1 yapper on the field. But he's a type of player that loves the big occasion, loves when the Port Adelaide club are up against the wall, and it's a big challenge for them tonight. Second game back, he was outstanding.
Well, that biff really started when Butters had a bit of a move on James Warple in the first quarter. That was the first biff, so he definitely sets the tone, Zak Butters. What about if we've got to cap off all 3? That is Rosie Butters and Jason Horn-Francis. As you said in the call, Geordie, he's just so hard to tackle. You almost can't tackle this man.
The weekend started with the old bull, Patrick Dangerfield, and Thursday night, and it finished with the young bull, Jason Horn-Francis. Get him a nose ring. Get him an old bull ring there. He was magnificent. He's just so powerful, isn't it? Like, it's a unique set of physical skills, and he's obviously got the skills to go with it as well.
He might be a better kick than Danger, but he was outstanding. You're right. There was one passage of play or moment in play when, I forget the Hawthorn play, but they were nose to nose and Jason Horn-Francis walked away. It's just a really good sign of maturity and where his attention lies, because he has been maybe criticised in the past, getting into that sort of argy-bargy and maybe wasting a bit of energy in those types of incidents. But his attention is on the ball and he's hard to stop.
Brownie, I heard one of your requests for the post-game was clip up all the bits of biff throughout the night, because you want to just commentate us through his highlights package. And as I said, it started with a bit of Butters and Warple.
Well, it sure changed last week. Tim Zoo had a knockout in the 4th round, so I need some more calling of the biffer. We got a bit of it tonight as the game went. Not enough from Hawthorn early, that's for sure. Zak Butters sort of stayed away a little bit right until the end. We know he's only got about $500 before he crosses the $50,000 threshold.
And
there we go to Port Adelaide. Well, we didn't see the aeroplane on the field, did we? Jack Ginnivan didn't score a goal, but we saw it from the Port fans.
They didn't need to do it. They were so dominant in the first half. That didn't even need to come into their game, Port Adelaide. So,
just quietly on that, how relieved do you think Ken Hinkley is right now?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, look, if they come out tonight and they put up a poor performance, you can only imagine what the storyline would have been tomorrow morning. They would have been calling for Kenny's head. The succession plan hasn't worked. Get rid of him now. Yeah. That would have been front page, back page, everywhere across Australia. So you don't need to put up with that for another week at least, but it just shows they've got the talent there. Remember they made a prelim final last year? Now, I know they've lost a couple of players, but they've still got the nucleus of that group. So they need to play better than what they've performed so far this season until tonight.
It was similar to that performance. It might have been Western Bulldogs. And remember the interview that Sarah Jones did with him after the game, and it had been a big week, and the emotion poured out of Kenny. I think he'd be feeling similar feelings tonight after what has been a big week.
Proud of his boys because they played for him yet again. One of the things they did really well, Brownie, was blocking the corridor, and the Hawks just continuously struggled to exit their D50.
Yeah, we had a great vantage point, didn't we, Geordie? And they were just able to block up. Hawthorn, they can be really dangerous. Got some powerful moves off half-back. Impey and Amon, they were able to limit their production coming out of there. They probably missed Scrimshaw, who wasn't there, but every time they tried to go through the corridor, it was just blocked up. I thought it was a really disciplined effort by Port Adelaide's players, their midfielders, and their backmen to set up behind the ball, Geordie.
It's a great piece of vision because, one, the way that you set up defensively and then you're able to turn the ball over allows you to be in a position to then attack. So you see there, the two Port Adelaide players who are blocking the corridor actually get used on offence. So it was a really disciplined way to defend, but it actually helped them to bring the ball back through the corridor and attack in a manner that was really dangerous.
And then the Powers intercept marks as well. In the end, 20-11.
Well, eventually they had to throw James Sicily forward the back end of the second quarter. So I'm not sure what's the bigger storyline. What's more, is it Port Adelaide taking those intercept marks, or is it Hawthorn's issues ahead of the ball? So the personnel, Joel had a poor night. We know that Lewis is injured, Kelshadi is injured as well, so they desperately need a target ahead of the ball. I'm not sure Sicily's going to be the permanent forward, and you can't rely on Jack Gunston, a veteran, to kick 6 goals every week.
Yeah, I thought the competitiveness of a child was poor tonight, which allowed Port Adelaide to control the air in those types of plays. When the ball went to Gunston or even a Luke Bruce at times, at least they halved it. I just thought Chol could have halved those situations a lot more than he did, and was really disappointing in that area.
From a Hawthorn point of view, their first loss of the season, Geordie, do you think we can say this will just be an outlier, or where do you sit tonight on the Hawks?
Well, Sam Mitchell would certainly hope so. I mean, Will Day is clearly a big out. Warple comes back in after a couple of weeks off. You can't make excuses, but they've had a big bye. They've had sort of nearly 2 weeks off football, so they haven't had that continuity over the last couple of weeks, but you would hope so. I mean, there were signs out there tonight that we haven't seen this year so far, and even last year. I thought they were really good in big games last year, held their own, but tonight there was just too many passengers, and it was left to too few.
Just quickly though, they did give up a big first quarter lead against GWS, albeit in different conditions, didn't they? And tonight again, poor start. Yeah. 5 goals down early.
Yeah, I don't think, by their own admission, they haven't been shooting the lights out. Like, they haven't blown a team off the park this year. We see there that the biggest margin has been 26 points. So sides have been in it against them. The first half we haven't seen for a while, though.
Exactly, that's what I was just about to say. Yep. We haven't seen them their presence almost non-existent in the first quarter or two.
Yeah, that's right.
Like that.
Exactly.
There was nothing Sam Mitchell could have done that would have fixed the problems. There was just too many holes that had to be fixed, and too many players that couldn't get their hands on the ball. And that was largely contributed to Port Adelaide's dominance.
It makes for a big game. The Easter Monday clash at the MCG is going to be enormous, isn't it? It's obviously traditional matchup, because if they can get through that one, they'll be heavy favourites for the next 3 games after that, Hawthorn.
One of the positives for the Hawthorn tonight, though, was one of their leaders in Jack Gunston and his 6 goals. What did you make, Brownie? Yeah,
he's fantastic, and I love how he's reinvigorated his career, hasn't he? And look, he went to Brisbane, tried something out there, didn't work out, but back into a comfortable system and understood where he is in his career, and obviously Sam would have communicated that to him. But he's playing an important role, and he was the only winner ahead of the ball tonight. It's very important at the moment with Lewis not there and Deere not there, and Chol underperformed. You don't want to be relying on keep throwing Sicily forward, do you, Silk? So he was fantastic.
Well, what I did like was he took the 7 marks, so he's able to still get around the ground and use his footy IQ to get those uncontested marks. When you're slowing up, that's what you got to work on. He's had his IQ at the top of his game for a long time, and when the marks start dropping away, that's when you've got to do some other things. But yeah, 6
he has been one of the smartest forwards to play our game over a long period of time. Well done to him, and good on him for continuing his career.
It's a great example of why to keep those senior players around when you can. The Jai Newcombe, Willem Drew matchup we were expecting. Yeah. Jai, the way he turned it around in the second and third quarters in particular was quite impressive.
I love the matchup, and big fan of the Croyd Flyer, Willem Drew from down our way, Geordie. But Jai Newcombe, he's an absolute beauty as well. So Hawthorn, he always, he helped not turn the game back in Hawthorn's favour, but got Hawthorn at least with a fighting chance in the second half, didn't he?
Yeah, no doubt he would have been challenged at half-time. I mean, Sam Mitchell goes to the leaders and really challenges them and asks more. So if you look at his numbers purely for the second half, 15 disposals, 7 clearances, 1 goal, 6 score involvements. I mean, that is a test of character. It shows you what the player is made of. He didn't want this to be a 100-point loss. So he had a really good contribution after being well held at half-time.
And, hey, they did stage quite a comeback. I mean, I think Port Adelaide would have been a little bit worried there. 8 minutes to go, 22. And it got to 22.
Yeah, it did. Oh, yeah, there's some nervous moments. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Well, they were. Well, the Hawthorn fans were up and about. You could feel it. I was near the bench. They thought they could win. And it wasn't until the Willie Rioli double goal where I thought that then changed the momentum back into Port's favour.
It was... We were looking at the clock, weren't we? Sort of 8 minutes to go, 7.5 minutes to go. Can the gap be lessened? But it was too little, too late, I think, in the end. And I even think 30 points. It felt like it was a bigger win than that to Port Adelaide. Yeah, that first half clearly was set up.
Well, they did lead by 71 points in the second quarter. So what do you think opposition teams would be taking out of this tonight, knowing that Hawthorn were one of only 3 undefeated teams heading into gather round, and now they've got their first loss on the board? What would opposition teams be looking at when now scouting Hawthorn?
Well, I think the challenge is to do it for a whole game. So if you look at the way that Port Adelaide were able to win, it was around contest and clearance, and they maintained that for a solid first half, which allowed them to be, you know, that margin you talk about, 65 to 75 points. Hawthorn grappled with that in the second term, but I think if you talk about contest and clearance and the way that they defended the ground, I think was a big plus. And the way that you look at trying to defend Hawthorn. Usually they've got 3 modes in the way they want to move the ball. Long down the line, 45, or they go around. Even the switch was taken away. And when they tried to switch, it was slowed down, which forced them back into that skinny side game.
Yeah, I think if you can take that aerial firepower or make them reliant on that, you know, if you can force them long down the line, which they were able to do, I just thought it really played into Port Adelaide's hands, allowed them to take those 20 intercept marks, Silk. And they looked very limited in there, and they were impotent, weren't they, going forward?
Well, they were. The way they set the field up and not allowing Hawthorn to come back through the middle or get their transition game going. I thought Powell Pepper was pivotal on Sicily, taking the back shoulder and dictating to him, and then we saw Sicily go forward in that move. And then there were some subtle things with Port Adelaide did with the ball going forward where they could have kicked it to the open side, high risk, high reward, but they kept it skinny. There were some little chip kicks back onto the skinny side. So if they did lose that contest, Hawthorn will be forced to come back through the numbers, not go through the open side.